My favorite place, my favorite people, my favorite thing to be humbled and grateful and excited to get to say every week is that the vulnerable are powerful and that the most gangster thing you could do is serve. And that the second most gangster thing you could do is to tune into the All the Way Live podcast. Wagwan.
Y'all know exactly what time it is. Every single week, my brother and I dedicate ourselves to coming to this right here show, the All the Way Live podcast, so we can provide y'all with carefully curated conversation for your cranium. We do that so we can share information with people, man. This whole show is about sharing information. We look at thoughts, topics, things, and ideas that y'all are interested in. We dedicate ourselves into it and we create a conversation around it. We break it down. We do that weekly. And we do that because we know that people are going through it, man. People are going through it. You know, people are really suffering from depression. Depression numbers are through the roof. People are feeling lonelier than ever. People are really struggling out here. And so, what we try and do is be a space of positivity, of good energy that you can come back to, keep you going. And I know I've gone high in my own supply. You know, sometimes I come back to this podcast to make me feel better. So it brings me so much joy to come talk to the folks, man. And brings me even more joy to talk to my brother. Can't I love this? I love this.
Hey, bro. Well, shout out to you. Shout out to everybody going through the struggle. You know what I'm saying? I feel like a Biggie Smalls track starts like that, so I feel even better about it. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to all y'all, wherever you may be, whether you're listening to us on SoundCloud, whether you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever podcasts can be found, or whether you're tuned into the stream, whether you're watching us live, you know what I'm saying, on the YouTube. It is all love. It is all gratitude from Exeter by way of Joe Berg, my boy. You know what I'm saying? Both of those spaces forever in the building. South Africa forever, ever in the building. Also forever in the building. This side is Chicago. This podcast is forever, ever recorded on stolen land. This land here in Chicago was cared for by the Potawatomi people, the Council of the Three Fires, and the violence done to remove them from this land is inseparable from the state that we find this city in, the state that we find this country in the state that we find this world in, right? So we got to atone for that. We got to acknowledge that. We got to think about how we're going to address that and redress that. We got to think about how we're going to lift up indigenous people the world over, how we're going to build up bridges and build up love between black and brown people the world over, and how y'all going, what will y'all, man, how are we going to get y'all part of the movement? How we going to get y'all part of the conversation? How we going to get y'all, man, to meet us, to contribute, to be a part of this community in a real way. Let us know how we can do that. Like that. Intro's over. Let's get into the show.
Thank you, sir. And the transitions are running super smooth this episode.
Yes, sir.
Can I note that was a recommended and reviewed transition?
why did you do
It
that?
was an accident. It was an accident. I didn't do it on purpose. But
You
we're
got,
professional over here. We're
yeah, for
professional.
sure. got a hair trigger on that transition button for sure.
I know. It's way too much fun, man. It's way too much fun. But this week, one of the topics that we wanted to get into, specifically, Brother Miles, was the boys go to therapy. The boys go to therapy, you know. And me and you went to couples therapy this week just to get our love languages back aligned, you know.
Yeah, and you can see that it's resulting in this quality, this effortlessness that you getting to experience on a pod. You know what I'm saying? So we hope that y'all can appreciate that we're getting us right for you, and for us. But also, we hope that you can feel that. Can you feel it? Hashtag feel the love in the comments.
If you feel the love,
All
put
the way love.
hashtag and spelled feel the love.
That's right. But man,
Nah,
so check this out, man. For real though, therapy's a real thing. And I think it would benefit us, right? To like, I don't know if they have that. Do they have friend therapy where we just like go and just sit and just be like, this my homie, right? Like, and we pretty cool. He's a pretty cool dude, and Yeah. What would we talk about in therapy? What would we work out?
For our couples therapy, I definitely think that like our love languages could definitely be more aligned. I feel like you're more of a gift giver and I'm more of an act of service type of person. Sometimes I feel like you don't receive my gifts well. And that's
Ah,
all I
okay.
would
Well,
say.
I can work on how I receive, how I can receive. I receive. I hear you. I receive what you're saying to me first and foremost, and I will work on how I can receive gifts from you. You are still holding on to capitalism, and I just really want to see if we can invite a third party into this conversation to see if we can work through that. You know what I'm saying? Real quick, and just get you all the way over. You know what I'm saying? To this, to being like, yo, man, we can break this thing all the way down.
Well, it and maybe part of the issue with this conversation is that we don't take it seriously enough, right? Maybe the whole reason we're having this conversation of the boys go to therapy is that we don't take it seriously enough. But I, for one, um, explained to you over the week that I was like,
Oh man, that's unfortunate, bro. He was just about to get into his bag. You know what I'm saying, to let y'all know what was going on. And unfortunately, this is one of those times where I cannot speak on behalf of my brother. As you guys can probably tell, we're about to get into like some therapy stuff. And nothing too deep, you know what I'm saying, but definitely still his experience to share. My experience, uh since you asked, thank you for asking. All right, I hear you, um is kind of minimal actually, with like actually organized therapy, right? In a couple of different instances, at the um request of my parents, when I was still under their roof, especially as a teenager, we were just butting heads. They I've gone to speak. I went to go speak to someone, and that was interesting. It actually felt good to like talk to somebody. But that was kind of my kind of limited experience. And Zway's back to kind of share what he wanted to share.
I, I was following when you was talking about your limited experience with therapy and going in with your parents, right? Um, this you could consider my first adult self-initiated process into therapy, and we had a larger
We just go. This is actually planned, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back and forth with the stories, right? And this is gonna look like a 3-man weave with two people. It's me, Zway, and y'all. All right. So y'all just gonna keep double dutching with us, right? So back to my story. What I had said. All right. So I was.
great double dutch. I love the double dutch. Go ahead, King. It's your time to shine, baby. Tell your story, please. Clearly, that's the story we're
Uh,
supposed to hear.
I'm playing. It's all improv. It's all improv. Back to you, son. For real.
Technical difficulties, man. But um so first self-initiated process to go into therapy, and you said, yo, let's touch on that, let's talk on that on the show and bring that forward. I wasn't really too sure how to approach that, but it did lead me down a pretty interesting hole about actually trying to see the numbers and figures behind therapy in our communities, and also engage in some conversations about how people feel about them, seeing how people.
Back to me. All right. But to Zoe's point, right, if I can kind of just jump in on where I feel like he was kind of going, the conversations in our communities is not happening enough. In some ways that might be changing though. In some ways I feel like I start to see that conversation a little bit more, but certainly still continues to need to be had and uplifted, and there's still a long way to go to kind of remove the stigma around therapy, especially in communities of color.
Definitely, I think there's like a lot of space for like the stigma to be moved away. And I don't think I could say I was confronted with any stigma per se up front, which is why you starting you starting with your story and telling it in pieces is interesting. Like what was your experience going through therapy, if you don't mind sharing that?
Yeah, I don't think I personally had any stigma against it, although I'll say that I'm for both of us to sit here and at 28 and go, yeah, people should go to therapy, yeah, and we've both been once in our lives, might speak to just kind of an underlying, if not subconscious, like stigma up within ourselves, like an underlying current that maybe keeps people from making that leap or but and there's also sometimes that's an expense, right? What is your access to therapy? But I think it just speaks to the fact that not as many people engage with it, even if some of the conversation is shifting towards people being more accepting of other people going and associating it less with any specific type of disorder or issue, like just going to therapy to go and understanding that kind of having a space to share and be listened to objectively in a lot of ways is important just for us as people.
Yeah, yeah, and I try to hold a very open mind going in, right? And I'd say that what motivated me to pursue that, one, has been something that I've been meaning to do. And I think, as you said, some of those restrictions, like financial restrictions at a time, might not have allowed me, or time restrictions might not have allowed me to do that. But in wanting to take my mental health as serious as I take the rest of my health, I just figured there's tools that professionals have in terms of being able to navigate stresses, good times, bad times, and all those types of things, and having that outlet of being able to speak. So I definitely did go in with a very open mind, and met a very nice lady on the University of Exeter's Wellness Center. Her name was Catherine. Yeah, her name was Dr. Catherine, which was pretty cool. An old, not old. She's a middle-aged
Yeah.
UK.
Oof, don't
Yeah,
do that.
yeah, no, no.
Our bad, Dr. Catherine.
A very youthful Dr. Catherine. Um, don't do that. You don't gotta highlight it.
That's
Highlighting it makes it
funny.
worse. Um, but yeah, shout out to her for making that experience one that was very comfortable, one that was very easy. We only had 20 minutes to go in, but I think from a first time takeaway, that was a very positive experience, I must say.
Yeah, well, I think that's powerful, right? That if only 20 minutes, if you felt good about going, you felt good about, in a lot of ways, it's like kind of exercising, right? It's kind of like, this might be uncomfortable, right? I would rather stay in bed or stay on the couch or, just go directly to eating maybe after work or whatever. But once you do it, you feel good about it, right? And I think that's an important thing to acknowledge is like, yeah, just that to feel better mentally the way that you can feel better physically after working out, like imagine what that does for your outlook, imagine what that does for your energy, so that's dope. I'm glad you had that experience. If I can kind of ask a couple of things about it, kind of not having made that initial foray in my adult life, right? And again, shout out to Dr. Catherine for creating a safe and welcoming space. Did you feel like if you could have had more time, um, both that day and like longevity wise, that there are breakthroughs for you to make in your mental space through therapy?
I definitely, and that's actually one of the things that Dr. Catherine said right after the session. She was saying, "Yo, this institution doesn't have what you need. What you need is a long-term plan that can, with somebody that can become accustomed to the nuances of the things that you're dealing with, right? And where that center really is for dramatic preventive circumstances. They really got a lot of kids to be able to tend to, and they're looking to stop any imminent danger for the most part, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah, I feel you. She's screening for yeah, anybody that might be a threat to themselves or others.
there you go,
That's
there you
the
go.
top priority.
That's the type of thing. But definitely, I could see having that longer type of relationship, because there's so many layers to things, right? In life in general, and there's a lot of things that I don't think we understand we're carrying around with us, and many things that I didn't understand, like that I still know there's more depth towards them, and I think having a professional guide you towards those depths is going to be cool. And it all comes from a place of self-understanding. A place of self-understanding comes from a place of um, maturity and growth. You know, it feels like a responsible thing. If I had to make a similarity, I compare it to is like after workout, you eat a crisp, like a clean salad with, you know, grilled chicken and vinaigrette, like just a very healthy dose of something, you know, and that's what it felt like.
That's really dope. So,
Mm.
and then we that kind of comes back to access. What you were saying about them not really being able to provide that type of long term program for you. Is that something that you feel like you'll seek out now?
Yeah, it is. And actually, like, even more importantly, I'm trying to think like as an employer, how can I bring this type of resource to um my employees, right? How do I open up this sort of avenue? That's like a serious focus, you know. We spend most of our time when not sleeping at our jobs to a certain extent, and I think that type of thing is super important. But even on that point of accessibility, right? If you look at the figures of the disparity between the availability of therapists and psychologists within marginalized communities, you see that there's a drastic under availability. There's very limited availability for those types of resources, and even in understanding that you could be Zwe in a good school going to a wellness center, that still might not even be the right one. So like there's a whole process in being able to get the right type of help. So if you have that resource already limited in certain the communities that we work in, it points out to the figures of some of the stigma that's associated with this thing in communities, and the lack of understanding that sometimes is associated with it, and also why it's so difficult for that to keep increasing, why the availability of therapists and psychologists in places where people can speak to people is not being looked at enough, you know.
Yeah, and that's really tough, right? Because it seems like these communities are really the ones. I wouldn't say the only ones that really need therapy, but I would say having the stress of additional risk factors placed on you, right? When you have limited access to food, when you have limited access to regular physical health care, when you have limited access to maybe job opportunities and things like that, right? You it that need to have a space to be able to talk about those things compiles, and for that to be one of the resources that you don't have, that's really tough. We're seeing different ways to kind of address that though, like things like Talkspace, things like apps and helplines that people can reach out to talk to somebody virtually.
Mm.
Kind of expansions of things like the suicide hotline, um, and the things like that. Have you ever tried Talkspace?
No, I never. And I was gonna ask you the same thing, if you've ever tried Talkspace, or if being somebody that has yet to like move into that step, would you consider that as like therapy light?
I I think therapy light, I don't know if I would categorize it as that, because I think it might be really useful for people that need somebody to talk to immediately. But I do think that, to the point that you were making about making a deeper, longer term commitment, I think that that is really the way that you get effective help, is that you find a doctor that works for you, and that understands you, or that you feel good talking to. You develop a relationship with them over time. They get to know you, the way you express yourself, and what you're going through. And with that, all of that color that categorizes like the problems that we might bring to an initial set of therapy, an initial session of therapy. I think that that is, yeah, that's there's something to be said for that. But again, how much does that cost in the long run? um so yeah, but without getting stuck on cost, that also makes me think of like, over the long term, if you were going to make that commitment, would you want your therapist to be black? Do you think that would matter?
I'm glad you asked me that. I'm glad you asked me that. For to me, my therapist Dr. Catherine was a white lady, right? And I will say that at no point did I feel a particular, let's say, like something's missing. I wish she was, I wish she was, I wish she was, right? Maybe that develops over time. I'm not sure, but it was, I wouldn't say it was that was a reaction that I had. But a lot of people prefer that, right? A lot of people have very a lot of people have strict preferences on the sex and the race of the person that they want to be able to do therapy with. And then you start and you look deeper into the numbers of resource availability, right? Now, if you're looking in these concentrated communities again, like who are you looking to in terms of resources that look like you? When the people that are doing those jobs are sometimes the only people that want to be doing those jobs. And that's like being a community therapist, positions like a social welfare therapist, things like that. These people take on a lot of hours. There's high burnout rate. You know, it's already restricted in the type of resources that those people have. So like to tying it to myself, and I think why I keep bringing it back to the community is because that was my reaction going through it. Right, I went in there and I was just like, I wanted to absorb this thing of value and see how else we could put it to people that need it a whole lot more than we do.
That's not how you're supposed to use your therapy, dude.
I'll tell you what, I went there way too excited. I went there, dude, expecting a couch. I went there, dude, to kick my feet up. You know, I think she was like, you don't need this right now, but you know, was definitely able to point me in the right direction. But yeah, I definitely went in there very excited for sure.
Yeah, but you're supposed to be focused on you. That's a time for I feel like that's a time for internal reflection rather than like oh, I know a whole bunch of people who need this. Wow, let me think about what I'm gonna tell them. You know what I'm saying? But I mean that's how if you said you left with a feeling well and feeling in a positive mindset, having kind of addressed and thought about some of the things that we walk around carrying. So I'm glad it was a successful session to you. But back to the question of like you're right. So the reality of access continues to come up, right? Whether it's do people have therapists in their area available to them? Period. Can they afford them? Can they find one that is that represents somebody that they can talk to, right? I'm not saying you have to have a therapist that matches your race or your gender, right? But can they find somebody is there enough of a selection that they can find somebody they feel comfortable talking to? For me personally, I would be hard pressed. Like, and this is, I don't know, like, and maybe this is what it's part of being in the United States and just having the pressure of the way that racism is so ingrained in the culture here. But I couldn't have a therapist. I'm not saying I couldn't have a white therapist, but I couldn't have a therapist that wasn't down for me to talk about how hard it is to be black a lot. You know
I thought being black was your favorite thing in the world.
it is my favorite. It is my favorite thing in the world, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But that doesn't mean that it's not hard, right? And that doesn't mean that it's not. Uh, the I the struggle is a marathon, right? And we're playing a very small role in it. And as I look back upon all the people I consider my heroes, right? I think that's a beautiful struggle, and I'm happy to be a part of it. But if I have a therapist and I have a space where I'm talking through my issues, a lot of those issues are rooted in systemic racism. And I would need somebody who's willing to have a like conversations about that. And if they're white, confront their own whiteness and their own ideas about race in trying to provide therapy to me, right? Like I gotta know you're not racist if you're gonna be all up in my head. I gotta know that, right?
And that's 100%. When it comes to that type of choice, you definitely have to be as stringent as you can. It's much like finding a barber to a certain extent, where you have to.
Only black men feel like that. It's like finding a barber is as important as finding a therapist. That
Dude,
is
which
funny.
one you how many barbers have you had versus your therapist?
I know that I will be honest and say that I have thought longer and harder about which barber I'm gonna go to than I have considered therapy, and that's sad. That's my bad.
At, at some point, I do think that we should get into the conversation of breaking up with your barber and how
It's hard.
traumatic that can be.
It's hard. Yeah, y'all see me going through it.
Y'all go through how things at home.
Nah, things are great. Shout out to Derek, man. Derek takes care of me. I just don't see him enough because of the pandemic. I'm not going nowhere, and I'm letting the beard grow out healthy. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
man. A lot of relationships are lost in the pandemic. Don't worry about
Thank you.
it.
I
Definitely.
see you
So,
pulling some up.
yeah, man, I wanted to be able to show the difference between psychiatrists, psychology, and psychiatrists, psychologists, right? And show the difference between those two things because I do understand that they're very different. Um, so just to be able to get into it, psychiatry and psychology overlapping. A psychiatrist is a medical doctor who specializes in preventing, diagnosing, and treating mental illness. A psychiatrist's training starts with 4 years of medical school and is followed by 1 year internship. Okay. So, diagnosing and treating, preventing, diagnosing, and treating mental illness. Psychologist is doctoral study of minds and behaviors. So, psychologist is has a doctoral degree and studies the mind and behaviors. And then there's counselors, social work. So I think it's important to be able to have that difference in those things because in understanding what they are, they can allow you to also gauge like where somebody is, right? If somebody is going to a psychologist or if somebody is going to a this help me.
It's all right, brother. It's all right.
It's
It's
a
all right.
tongue
You got.
twister.
I'm open. I'm
Tongue
open. I got you. I got you.
It's a
Right.
tongue twister, bro. I'm trying.
I
Yo,
got
English
you.
came on a boat.
That big facts. Put rock. Let it on us. All right. You know what I'm saying? So check this out. Check this out, right? I think the way that it's been explained to me, and I think I'm on this, is that psychologists, both of them are kind of trained to understand the human mind and human reaction and human behavior. The one key difference is that psychiatrists, I believe, are able to prescribe medicine, whereas psychologists are, it's just kind of a back and forth conversation, from which hopefully you grow, right? Psychiatrists kind of might prescribe some medication along with that, and might be treating a specific disorder, but not always. And then yeah, there are counselors. There are people that are just available for people to talk to, but may not have the same medical credentials. And I encourage people to create more like creative ways for people to get together and talk. Right here in Chicago, there are some peace circles that are being created, which are just opportunities for people to come together and talk about trauma that they've experienced, but not just that, right? Just talk about community, what it means to them. Talk about like things like vision boarding and stuff like that. Those spaces are important, and I think we need to provide that access, whether it is clinical psychology or psychiatry, or just safe spaces for people to talk about their problems. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
and this is what this space is, right? And it does go back to why we love to do this, and what if this really does feel like a therapy session, and that we push ourselves in being vulnerable, have honest conversation, not judge each other on our responses, and not judge the people that listen, but just like truly try and have provide a space where we can talk through some of these things that we be experiencing.
Big facts. Big facts. Yeah. And if 1, 10, 100 million people feel the same way or feel seen, when we talk through these things, then mission accomplished. What we got next, Brody?
Indeed. Hey man, there's a whole lot to be able to talk about. We got an even more important conversation to be had, man. Let's get right into it.
What up, man?
Too fly, too fly.
What up, world? Soul podcast.
The Soul Podcast for show. The show. Hey man, you know exactly what we do on this show. This is current news.
Yes, sir.
This is current news, and we do this, man, so we can explain information to the homies.
Yes, sir. That's what we about, man. That's what we about, right? This show is for the homies by the homies, right? And a lot of times
Fubu.
that's right. That's like for, for her. I don't know. But
Nah, no, it's not.
but anyway, man, that is so much rooted in what this show is about for real. It's just like taking the things that we see in the world, the things that make us scratch our heads, and trying to talk about it in real time. Make sense of headlines, make sense of like buzzwords as they come out, figure out what is important to pay attention to, what's not. Try and keep black folks from being late on too many of these waves, especially the financial ones, the things that are important for our economic equity. You dig me? And this is kind of an interesting conversation amidst all of that, right? Pay transparency. Zway, have you ever heard the term pay transparency before?
I didn't. I have heard of the term pay transparency, but when we decided that we should dig even deeper into this topic, I definitely had to reassess a few of the things that I thought pay transparency meant, because pay transparency, pay gap, and pay quality all seem like the same thing, but those are all, those there's nuances in each of those things that kind of separates the information that they're trying to share. So pay transparency was one that I definitely had to familiarize myself with even more.
When you first heard the term, what did you think it was?
It's being able to adequately see how people are being paid, right?
Yeah, I
Being
thought
able
I
to,
thought you was gonna get a list of everybody's name at the job next to a number, and you was gonna
yeah.
know how much they made.
Mhm,
And you was
mhm.
gonna be able to look over your cubicle and be like, "Bro, you really had me pay for lunch? Really,
But
really?"
that's taboo. That's taboo, man. It's taboo to talk about salaries in front of it's taboo to talk about salaries in front of coworkers. I, with the hubris that I have, which is probably why I was a terrible employee, in a dinner with a bunch of my former employees, we're busy talking about payment, whatever, and I was like, guys, the reason we can all make more if we all just are honest with how much each of us are making. There's so much more power in the collective pool. And I was like, I'll start by myself. I'll tell you how much I made. And I told those dudes how much I made. And then everyone got quiet. and then somebody came up to me, a senior, and he said, and out of a place of love, bro. This man said out of a place of love, and was next to another gentleman that passed away. May his soul rest in peace. I don't know why I did this, but it's symbolic. It's symbolic. Come on, man.
Hey man, you was in it. Nah, you was telling the story. I feel you. That went with it. Go ahead. I was with
And
you. I almost
he
did
came
it
up,
back. I almost Malek Masalam, brother.
dude, that is so inaccurate, right? But he comes up to me, so inaccurate on so many
That's
levels.
funny.
He says to me, "Hey, man, never do that again." And I still don't know how I feel about that. I believe in the power of transparency, but yeah.
We gonna get you up collective bargaining, my guy. See, it's in you. You got a little Shay in you, bro. A little Shay Guevara deep inside you. You know what I'm saying?
You see this coat?
You said, but check me out, right? So yeah, so I'm thinking the same thing, right? And I'm thinking it's very taboo. I'm thinking we've taught like, yo, you don't really talk about your salary or how much you're making with your coworkers, even your neighbors, right? Um, and so yeah, the idea of pay transparency, which can come in many forms, right? It's not just always getting to see exactly how much each person is making. Sometimes it can be arranged just on based on the position, right? Sometimes it can be building out a essentially like a an equation for how experience and kind of different aspects of productivity can be determined to equal your salary. So pay transparency can happen a lot of different ways, but it's coming up now because some companies, especially some in New York that are facing some backlash actually right now, are have tried to institute this, right? And people have mixed feelings about it, right? And one of the reasons it is people have such strong feelings about it is because it's seen by some as a way to address the gender pay gap.
Mm, And that goes to the heart of the pay transparency conversation. It is you cannot have the pay transparency conversation without addressing the pay gap conversation, because that conversation has dominated the tone of pay transparency, right? And it is a very fascinating thing to be able to look at, and it does force you to have to understand the nuances of what makes up salaries, the nuances of what makes up um that makes up payment equality and makes up pay value. There's a book that I was reading, Everyday Sexism, Laura Bates, right there up
This
on the
dude
roof.
looking for feminists over his shoulder. She said, "Huh? Am I saying it
Nah,
right?"
nah. I'm looking at the names of the books of the feminists that I read,
Nah, that's
right?
fire. That's fire. I'm playing with you.
But in calling and like in looking at what Laura Bates was looking at, right? Laura Bates is looking at the famous figure of the 79 cents to every that woman make 79 cents to woman earns 79 cents per dollar that men earn, right? Um, and that statistic I feel like is the one that's kind of stood out more than anything in the conversation of pay gap. Um, and it's a bit, I don't know, how do you feel about how has the experience of trying to understand pay gap and like thinking about creating a conversation behind it, how have you gone about that?
Uh, well, I've been dating women who care about other women very, very much for a very, very long time, and so I've been these conversations have been brought into my life in a very organic way, and I've been blessed, as I think a lot of us have, right, to be taught a lot by women, right, and a lot of the things that we need to learn as men, right, I think come from listening to women. And so I've come to understand that there is a lot of nuance when it comes to the gender pay gap, namely that the gender pay gap isn't the same as the gap between what men are and women are paid due to discrimination, right? That is a real number. There is a difference between what men and women are paid due strictly to discrimination, because people have been socialized to think of men as more productive in a lot of ways and a variety of reasons, right? Their places in the workplace, whereas women's places is at home, which I hope is something that we're contributing to as a podcast, the unlearning of that, right? But so there's this number, the gender pay gap, which is actually more based on the fact that women over the course of their careers, right, especially 7 to 10 years in, around childbearing age, right, tend to have to spend more time at home, right, and are expected to spend more time at home. And having to spend more time at home to raise children means having to turn down workplace responsibilities, means being away from the workplace, not being able to make the same commitments as their male counterparts who aren't expected, right, to do the work that is done of raising children at home, right? And so their trajectory as far as their career puts them on a path that makes them earn a lot more than women who are doing the unpaid labor of raising children. The gender pay gap is kind of, it's mitigated. It's seriously it's almost eliminated when you look at women that don't have children, right? So it's actually mostly a penalty on women for having children and being the ones that are expected to care for those children.
Definitely, and that margin that you speak about, right, where women that don't have children, specifically between the ages of 18 and 39, that's when you see almost a 0% variation in what men and women are making, right? Um, in fact, that figure tends to skew more towards the woman's end between the ages of 18 to 39, and then obviously from 39 onwards, those are formative years of a child. So that's when you would begin to see that increase, that sharp increase, right? Um, so let's get let's get technical. Can I kick it?
Yes, you can.
Can I kick it?
Yes, you can.
Y'all must have not heard episode 22. I said, but
I love it.
getting more specific with it, right? The study that was used to measure pay variances. It's a study that was started in 61 carried over, done multiple times. Again, multivariate study that looks at the many different variations uh, that determine what can at least predict, right? That's a good study is able to be able to take somebody, understand their variables, and then be able to indicate a value percentage of how likely that person is to fit in a certain group, right?
Mm.
So looking at the pay gap, the different things, the different variables that were taken in, people looking at race, occupation, education, um, and gender, right? Those are the four main variables in it: race, occupation, education, and gender. Gender formed 3% of the impact on those results.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's me being in school carrying around all these calculators and whatnot just got me typing these numbers. But education, occupation, and race all respectively take um, a higher impact on the particular pay gap that can exist, right? Or the determinants of what somebody is likely to be able to make. Race particularly, which is where the statistics of the payment variations between black women begins to become a little bit more accentuated, because now you're dealing with the different factor of education and race that can skew that significantly, even in the same roles of, let's say, women that are not of that same race, right?
Mm-hmm.
Boom. So what that indicates is that there is a reality, right? You cannot discount the fact that those experiences happen, right? That 3% of just gender is important, because a lot of what people go through that means a lot. Sometimes that might not necessarily be appreciated by the value of a statistic, right? There is something to be said about the value of something that might not necessarily be able to be recorded, right? Like, how do you how, let me not even go on a tangent on the type of examples I can make up. But all to say, right, what we do know is that the experiences of the people that are the experiences of women is that of a workplace that is made very difficult for upward mobility because of social reasons, which includes like being able to connect with the boss because of sports or golf interests or school background, fraternity, things of that nature. There's a dope episode about that on Dave. If you check that back out, yeah, that was
Yeah.
a dope episode. Yeah, that was. I thought that was cool how they handled that. Right, how Dave and the boss had like this. They could talk about sports at a whim, almost ignoring her out, even if she tries to pitch in. They're like, "Nah, get out of there."
Yep.
There's that element of it. And like I like what you said about the the value of choices, right? Such as childbearing and the impact that that particularly has on earning capabilities.
Big facts, big facts. But it's important also to acknowledge, like you were just highlighting, right? It's about choices, but women don't have the same choices as men, right? So we got to take into account things like single motherhood, right? And the choice that a lot of people make, right? To there are 3 times as many single mothers as there are single fathers, at least in the United States, right? And that's a murky number, and we're about fathers' rights for sure, for sure. But there's a reality to the fact that we've normalized single motherhood, and that's a reality that women are dealing with, and that we have to address, right?
But like you
Um,
can't say that like I'm not being, I don't want to be a contrarian, but when you say women don't have the same choices as men, what do you mean by that particular state? Help me understand that statement.
I mean, women, it's far less socially acceptable, and even the way that courts and the legal system are oriented is for if 2 people come together to have a baby, the baby is cared for by the mother no matter what, right? Custody typically tends to default toward the mother, right? There's really not the same. There's like socially we're conditioned to expect that the mother will never abandon her child, whereas we can see across various communities that we don't hold men to that same standard, right?
I'm following. I'm following. A statistic around the marriage side that is that particularly was interesting to me is when you look at men and women that both have a two-parent household where both parents are working equally full-time jobs, even the time that they dedicate towards child caring, towards household responsibilities, and towards general upkeep of the home will always more skewed towards women, which then includes like then you take it into the factor of like the time and the commitments that it takes to be able to actually run a household and a child, as opposed to that those margins were skewed more towards women. I'm just wary of making a blanket statement like women don't have the same choices as men. I think there's varying circumstances for different choices that we can all make. We all have a choice. The circumstances are unfair, but everybody has a choice. That's what I was just want to be careful of.
I guess. I mean, I guess I guess what I'm saying is that society orients people in a way that doesn't give them the same choice, and certain people in general, right, have different choices than other people have, right? Like, so the same way that, yeah, I mean, the same way that you can say like a man and a woman have the same choice to go out on a walk at night in whatever neighborhood they might be in. Like, sure, they have the same, they can both make that
The
choice, but the choice,
circumstances are different.
but that's what I'm, but that's exactly my point, right? And the circumstances around raising a child are different for men and women, right? And the
There you go.
expectations are different, right? So that's what I'm speaking to, right? To the point, and like even what you were saying, right? Women often end up, even when it's a two-parent household, taking on, the statistic is actually 9 more hours a week of household work, right? Than men actually take on, right? So it's like, yeah, that's a and that's not, I don't think because men are saying like that's a 9 hours is like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do, right? But it's just the way that we've all been conditioned and socialized. So while we still have our choice, our choices are colored by our circumstances, and our circumstances are certainly not always within our control. And when we talk about the difference between the race gap and the gender gap, there's this idea where the race gap requires reparations to fix it, right? You had an institution of slavery that was followed by an institution of Jim Crow, that was followed by an institution of redlining and housing disparities and the destruction of black people's, like, even when we did build up economic wealth, right? Tulsa,
Mm.
Oklahoma, right? It was destroyed. So you need reparations to fix that. But the thing about pay transparency when we talk about the gender gap is that we're in this space where we're addressing if the gap is 3%, we should be able to close that. And so when we look at pay transparency as an option to do that, we can talk about the merits of that. But when we talk about the gender pay gap and we see places that have actually been able to close it, right, by doing things like allowing men to take paternity leave, right, actually like giving men the same time off, and as a representation of a societal shift toward looking at men as caregivers the same way we look at women as caregivers, right? We can't, and that's connects to the gender pay gap conversation, is we can't look at women as earners of the household, right, until we look at men as caregivers as well. It's a shift. It's, you can't have one without the other, to me.
What what's particularly interesting, what's particularly interesting is, like you said, in places that have closed it, right? To the best of my studies, I'm not familiar with an instance on a wide level where that has been the case, and I could have overlooked some, right, where they've actually closed it. But I think what's particularly interesting is if you look at countries that have gotten as close as they can to eradicating, let's say, the that eradicate a certain level of poverty, and the well-being of the people within those countries are high. Usually a Scandinavian country of sorts is where they go, and they look at the they look at the behavioral choices of the people within those communities as a reflection of what can happen in a in a perfect society, right? Say, for instance, the government did pay you to go to school, did pay for your health care, you did live a good well-being, your children are paid to go to school, poverty is minimal. What choices do people make then, right? And what they've seen is that in those particular countries, men have generally skewed more towards hard labor, industrial and corporate jobs, whereas women have moved more towards lower paying jobs such as healthcare, particularly healthcare is where that figure was mainly dominated, and service, right? And within those particular brackets themselves, those the variations in the payments begin to expose themselves again based on the rest of the variations that we had mentioned earlier. So what I think is difficult for us to be able to to apprehend in this time right now is that not everything can be equal, right? Not everything is equal. And if you look into different pockets of things, you'll find inequalities in all of those things. And that comes into market value, that comes into market interest, that comes into that comes but for
But
real.
we can't explain we can't tell we can't just decide that we're okay with
Nah,
not
let me
creating it.
land.
All right, for sure.
Let me land, right? What I'm saying though is that there's so much power in being able to recognize your options. There's a lot of power in being able to recognize the value behind your interests, right? Because if you take for instance a certain demographic of men, right? If we're going to look at the pay variations in men, there's a huge gap in pay variations for men of color. There's a huge gap for variations of people whose education levels don't go past the high school level, in the background, in the community that they came from, in the proximity of their houses to hospitals, of their house to a clinical center. Those types of things expose themselves in very, very wide gaps, right? All to say, all to say that in understanding your options, in understanding, for instance, where an occupation of value is, one can almost direct themselves towards that path and be able to move in order to be able to earn a higher income. I'm not saying that everything is fair. I'm not saying that at all, because that would be a disservice to how unfair things are to people of color, to women, whatever the case is. Things are definitely unfair, and that we need to be able to fix. However, there is also so much power in understanding your options, right? Women who study law turn to earn a higher salary than men who study law.
Yeah, but
For
changing the
for a certain time. Doctors, female doctors also generally tend to dominate the medical sphere in terms of earning wages. Their psychology, we're talking about therapists, right? That's skewed towards women too. So like in understanding those options, one can plan themselves to be able to be there in the same way that a man can plan himself not to be there.
but one of your options should be to change the system, especially when you see structural inequality in it. That should be
I
one
agree
of
with that.
that should be one of my options. One of my options should be able to look at the system and say, the system is reinforcing patriarchy, right? The system is reinforcing the idea that women's place is to give care, right? And that plays out not only in the expectation that when they have children of their own, that they take care of them, but it also skews. You look at what you just said, right? The statistics in terms of women tend to gravitate towards the healthcare fields. Do we think that that's just coincidence, or do we think that that's because women are socialized to be caregivers, right? Even in those fields, the role, the higher earners tend to be doctors, tend to be men in a lot of places, right? Where women tend to be nurses, right? And don't tend to be able to advance in quite the same way, right? And a lot of that is due to exactly the same reason that the gender pay gap exists, is because you're in school or you're in residency right around the time that women are thinking about trying to have children, right? Or just biologically, that's the reality of being your childbearing years, right? So as a woman, like I would hope that just among all the options that you listed is for me to look at the system and say it's better for us to look at everybody as being able to be everything, like you said, right? For everybody to if for everybody to be able to be a caregiver or a person that is a breadwinner, right? Regardless of gender. And if there's a way that we can change policy to reflect the society that we want to see, then we should do that. And we shouldn't always just say, well, like within the system I can maneuver this way. Sure, it's not fair, but I'm just going to live with that. Like,
Yeah,
why? Because
I
if the
agree with that.
because I want to bring kids into I want to bring a little girl into a world where she doesn't, that's not why she's making that decision. Even if she has the choice, I would want her to be making that decision, not because
You know, I have to go against the grain if I want to be a professional as a woman. Like I just want her to be able to make that choice the same way my son would. And when I have kids, I want to be able to take time off to spend time with them just like my wife would. Because
Yeah.
I want to be thought of as an equal parent in that space. I want to be thought of as an equal caregiver in that space. So it's important to me to be able to take that time off to spend that with my kid. Right.
Mhm. Definitely, and that's why, in and to almost close my point, right? It's important to understand that there is actually and there is validity to the fact that there is discrimination based on gender. That is a fact. That is a full-blown fact. And that's a number. You can even put a number towards it, right? But there's also other factors within that same predictability that can also be considered. And also there's tools, prescriptive tools that can be taken in order to even make that difference closer. And that doesn't exist just for women, that exists for men as well, right? How to be able to do career planning that's directly skewed towards being able to achieve a higher level of income. These are things that everybody has access to. What I'm scared of, Miles, is that in the fight for in the fight for I don't want to say inclusivity, because I think we've gone past inclusivity, right? I think in the fight for, I don't want us to lose the difference in us, like the different things that we can all celebrate about each other. I don't want us to be able to lose that in an
Like what?
attempt for being able to celebrate, being able to celebrate. How come there's no men's strip clubs? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. There are. What do you mean? There are male strip clubs. Magic Mike.
But like, how many of them are there? But like, no, but like in the sense of like culturally celebrating the differences between us, right? And the things that in a
The
gender
difference
way as
between
well.
who? The difference between men and women, or the difference between what? In a
Between
gendered
men
way.
and women, between cultures, between races. Like there's so many different things that all of us have that makes us all special. And I do not want us to get to a place where we ignore those things and are afraid to be able to discuss the things that make us different without being unable to solve a problem without being also be able to celebrate the things that are different, because it is shown that the interests of men and women are different. Our interests are different. That is important to take into account.
Okay, but our interests being different and women being when women have children, they're the ones that are required to take time out. Not even required, like expected, the only ones given time to take like time off. I don't see the connection between those two
No,
things.
and that right there, that is an issue with the system that needs to be fixed, right? But I love celebrating motherhood. I love seeing the beauty of motherhood, and in a way only women can do, right? Just being able to, for real though, that's real. That's real. Like,
I think that's where it gets dangerous in the way only a woman can do, right? Like I think that's
not
where
only a
we
way a woman should do. I'm not saying in only a way a woman should do. I'm just saying in only a way that a woman does do it in, right? I like this. There's a certain element to it.
I don't know. I don't
Look,
know. I'm
look,
saying
look.
I'm saying there's a difference between to me I think there's a difference between a difference in people's interests and a different what people want to do and structural barriers we've created based on a system of putting men's needs and wants first, right? And so I think we can identify the things that
Yes.
are a part of that patriarchal system while still celebrating whoever anybody wants to be.
There you go. There you go. And I'm so glad I have you here with me. Because it's sometimes difficult to be able to put the words behind that. And that's exactly what I'm saying, right? It's not saying in any way that the issues that are prevailing shouldn't be addressed and that they don't matter. No, I'm not saying that at all. But I say in each and every one of us, there lies a certain level of personal interest, of taste, of art, of capabilities that can be celebrated, right? And there's still issues that can be handled that can make that a more fair playing field. But there is an appreciation to difference that I don't want to get lost in that.
Mm-hmm.
But like how Miles said it though. But I'm
Yeah.
saying, but like how Miles said it though.
Nah, I feel I hear you, man, and I appreciate this being a space where we can just talk things out in real time, where we have like, yo, folks, people that you hearing this, you what tell us what you think, throw it in the comments. I think
Yeah.
the only way forward is to have these conversations, right? And being intentional about explaining things for the homies as part of this show, I think is just being able to be real about like things we don't understand, pressing the boundaries and the very limits of like where our knowledge and where our beliefs can take us, right? And being willing to change those and adjust those and love each other. Even as we disagree, even as we find out new things about each other, man, that's what it's about.
And we're not experts, right? Like that's the whole point of the show, bro, is to be able to take these difficult conversations and these difficult thoughts and being able to have a safe space to be able to talk them through, right? At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is learn with y'all in real time. So you know what I'm saying?
Big facts. And I want to make a promise to the people too. This is the last time we're gonna talk for more than 25 minutes about some female issues without a female on the podcast, man.
That's a fact. That is the biggest sin that we've done. If there's any reason to criticize us, that's the biggest one. We gotta hold that promise that we can never have this type of conversation again without a woman being present.
Big facts. Big facts. Takes the hip hop.
Please.
Yo,
Oh man, thank God for hip hop.
yeah. Where we going first, man? Where we going first?
Oh my goodness.
Favorite part of the show.
And not just our favorite part of the show, clearly the people's favorite part of the show, man. They keep wanting us to review things. Those are the videos that get the most amount of likes. Those are the videos that y'all care about. Hip hop.
Yes, sir. And we have some quality hip hop to talk about today, man. And I'm always like, look, the landscape is beautiful. It's luscious, right? The hip hop landscape looks good. I like it. But there's some when you something gives you that feeling that, oh, I'm gonna be watching this for a long time. I want to see what happens next. I want to learn more, go back and listen to this person's discography. It's special when you got something that could be something. I think Corday could be something.
Definitely. From a bird's eye view, Corday, formerly YBN Corday. This is the first true Corday album that I've ran through. By suggestion by my brother, who said, "Hey yo, make sure you listen to that Corday album because we're gonna check it out next week." It's bro, we getting to that age where rappers are significantly younger than us.
Is he significantly younger than us? How old is my guy?
Yeah, early 20s.
Early 20s. Man, shout out to him, man. He's it's always corny when people older than you tell you got an old soul, or you know what I mean, but he's
That's
definitely, it is a compliment. It is a compliment. And he's reaching for maturity, and he's grasping it in a lot of ways, right? In some ways, maybe it's because I feel older than him. I'm hearing that and I'm appreciating it. But in a lot of ways, man, like intellectually, this kid is no joke. He's trying to get at some big ideas in his music, and I'm always appreciative of that.
Yeah. I mean, the cool thing about Corday that you can tell, and this was a little bit of something that like we caught when, funny enough, it actually reminds me of a bit of 50 Cent when he went through the Dr. Dre factory and how he came out on the other side in terms of the polish and the sound, the content and the lyrics, the range, the instrumentalism, the instrumentals that are used in there. We've seen a lot of artists move through that Dr. Dre school of music making, and he really does usually just pick from the top of lyrical capabilities. And for the longest time, you've heard people say Corday's that dude. You hear a lot of especially respected rappers talk about Corday's that dude. That's evident in some of the features that I hear. I will say that this impressed me. It impressed me more it was a very impressive piece of art. Let me put it that way. It was an impressive piece of art from the quality and how the sound is, from the execution to the ideas, from the cohesive sound of it. I think if you look at young rappers in the game right now, the content they're reaching for, the message that they're trying to put behind it, and the ability to execute it, it would be very difficult to find somebody, if you're comparing arts between each other, that can match up to this, I think.
Well said. Well said. Well said. Because I think when I look at, I'm just checking out his discography real quick. I do remember The Lost Boy 2019. That wasn't bad. I remember checking that out. And it very firmly was sitting like kind of next to Saba's Bucket List project. I think I might have went to Bucket List a couple more times back than this. And then even before that, Corday, YBN, the mixtape was 2018. It was kind of like the the when he was really bubbling, like the pop debut, right? He was already making music, but that was kind of like when the name got out there. And man, so like as like you said, it's always appreciated when an artist is intentional about trying to make art with their work, right? A lot of times some music that I really, really like, it's clear that the artist isn't really trying to make art. They're having fun in the studio, or they're just expressing themselves, or they're telling a story, or they're reaching for a hit. And sometimes they have the formula, sometimes they don't. But it's different when an artist goes in the studio to make something meaningful. And this is definitely that, man. Where do we put, I love what you said about like you can put him up next to a lot of different people because like, and we also spoke about him being a bit younger than us, right? So where's this lane where do you see him as competing with the the JIDs, the reasons, the that category, that group?
I think you would have to put him into that conversation. I think putting him in any other conversation would be a little bit misplaced in terms of especially if you look at the influences behind the music, right? Interesting comparison you made of Corday is J. Cole. You know, you could feel the Cole influence in there a little bit. And so if you look at the school of a lot of the rappers right now who are actually coming from under Cole's tutelage, and it's a lot of people's favorite rappers actually, if they're not truly looking, especially the ones that are truly doing the rapping. Cole is those is daddy, you know. So if you're looking at that school of people, you definitely have to put Corday into that conversation. I'd say this has to have woken Reason up. It has to have woken Boogie up. Has to have woken Vince Staples up. Um, I think they can look at this as a formidable entry into someone who can easily take over this thing, man. It's like watching it's like if I had to compare him, he's John Morant. That's who he is. He's John Morant.
I like it. I like it. And I like how you brought in, the other pieces of kind of that hip hop class, right? That this kind of era that we're currently in, this, and we're seeing who's going to be the next Kendricks and J. Cole's and Drake's. And as you put them amongst those people, do you get the sense from Corday that there's a little bit more of um a family friendly vibe? Do you get that from Corday?
It is a bit clean. It is a bit clean. But like clean makes money, man. That's the Will Smith model.
Big
And I
fact.
and I can see him following down that hole.
Big facts. And I think that there's a space, there's a gap. I think, I hope I'm not stepping on any toes if I'm saying that Chance the Rapper kind of left a gap as the family favorite, because the music still got a big day. I think he kind of lost people with that one, right? If am I crazy if I'm saying that might be an opening that Corday might be able to slide into?
You know, and bringing chances is a bit difficult. I was just listening to Acid Rap again. Acid Rap was everywhere when Acid Rap came out, man. When Acid Rap dropped, and we're in Chicago, and I remember you brought it back. You brought it the summer of 2014, 2013. You brought it in the summer of 2013, dude. It banged from everywhere. You could not hear that song, and from top to bottom, it was unanimously a favorite, right? So Chance came in with a whole different type of entry into the game, you know, from the 10-day theory, the mixtape, to bubbling into the city, then dropping Acid Rap, which just shook that summer. I don't think we've seen a particular moment like that from, and 10-day theory and then Acid Rap, you can't really say was a family friendly album. It's an album you can play in front of family, but is College Dropout a family favorite album?
I would say College Dropout is decidedly not a family favorite album. But I would say that Acid Rap actually, yeah, it's maybe it's not family friendly in that sense, but I feel like and you know what? Nah, you're absolutely right. Acid Rap isn't family friendly, and it was I really liked that project, and I felt like after that he took a more
Yes.
family friendly approach, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so you're right to point out that Acid Rap launched him in a different way that Cordae hasn't really had that one project that, I mean, Acid Rap, I think you could say that's a classic. I wouldn't be mad
It
at
is.
somebody saying that
It
that's a
is. It
classic,
has to
right?
be. It has to be. It has to be.
I don't think Cordae has that quite yet, but it's interesting. Like, do you think that I think we're still aligned in saying that from this point in his career and from the point after Acid Rap, there's a shift towards that family friendly model, and I think Cordae could reach that. I could see Cordae doing Apple deals like Chance did. I could see Cordae. He needs a 3. He needs whatever his hat or his gimmick is gonna be, right? But whatever that is, I could see him kind of filling that lane.
So if we're talking about family friendly rappers, who do you have on your family friendly list? Because any list that I've been able to put together, I don't think Cordae stands in that list.
So check this out, B. Wait. I want to hear what you mean by that. But I love where you're taking this. What do you mean by he doesn't fit on that list?
I got Amine.
Okay,
Amine.
kinda.
I got Kyle.
Kyle's closer, I think.
Kyle, Amine. That's where my list is. I don't know anymore.
So I was gonna actually, and it's interesting. Like, we can talk about whether this type of rap is losing steam a little bit amongst the younger generation, but because a lot of the rappers I'm about to name are retired / semi-retired, right? But Dizzy Wright, right? I'm thinking of like
Dizzy Wright ain't retired, bro.
but hold on, let me cook. So like there's Dizzy Wright, there's I'm so glad we've mentioned so many other people that we're comparing him to now, because who I'm about to say now is not, I don't think, a favorable comparison always. Like, hip hop might not hear it that way, but I think Logic, where Logic was before people decided Logic was corny, is kind of where Cordae is now, right? And Cordae is kind of Logic if Logic was black, right? And
That's
what
not
I mean,
fair, man.
What I mean by that is Logic. Cordae is Logic if Logic didn't have to talk about being mixed all the time.
That's not fair, because that's that man's experience, and clearly a lot of people, like, that's one thing that's not cool, man. You know,
why you gonna break down the problem with Logic like that, man?
I think, dude, I'm still uncomfortable about the pay transparency conversation. I just hope I didn't come off. My career can afford that.
Nah, it's just fine, dude. You're not gonna be a meme. You'll be cool.
Oh man, Logic, right? Yeah, definitely that 2014, 2015 Logic, when he came out with Numbers, Young Sinatra 1, Young Sinatra 2. Logic was bubbling at that time. Super bubbling. His content was around the same type of thing too. I think that's a very accurate comparison. I think if we had to put him there, right? But then we see where Logic ended up in terms of who we compare him to. Right now, we're looking at JID. We're looking at Mick Jenkins. We're looking at Isaiah Rashad. We're looking at Boogie. We're looking at Reason.
Yeah. Where does Bobby Sessions fall in that conversation, right? A little bit more on the, maybe not family friendly, but definitely trying to create something intellectual, definitely trying to create something artistic. There's Lou J, right? He's definitely kind of putting together some stuff that's a little bit more, I want to say soulful, but I don't want to take away from artists who aren't trying to be family friendly, right? There's an element of making music that sounds like the stuff we were encouraged to listen to as kids, right? Or like the stuff that you could hear your mom saying to 12-year-old you, like, why can't you just listen to Cordae? You know what I'm saying? You ain't gotta listen to 50 Cent. Why you can't listen to Cordae? He's so nice. I saw him on the TV. He had a button-up shirt. He looked presentable. He looked clean cut. Why can't you listen to Cordae?
And he's dating that one girl. What's her name?
He's dating that nice girl, Naomi Osaka. Naomi
Yo,
Osaka.
this sucker make it happen. Big bag, son.
Big bag. And yo, shout out to her for promoting the album too. Like shout out to everything she's doing to like I loved her stance on her mental health. Like, yo, Naomi, we're fans of
Oh yeah, we support Naomi over here, bro. We're big time Naomi supporters. You know what I'm saying? Been from time. Check the old episodes. But you know, Miles, you're saying that that family friendly, that conscious rap, right? And you put Bobby Sessions, but if you put Bobby Sessions in there, I think we're opening up a whole different door to like. I think this is the time of like conscious rap a little bit, man. I think conscious rap kind of is coming back. If you look at all the content, even if you're looking at, I was just saying, right? Nas's last album, Nas is preaching. You listen to even Tyler the Creator's last album, it's the same thing. There's intent there. J. Cole just dropped the album, and you know how he gets busy. Mick Jenkins, the same thing. Like I think Rick Ross last week, we talked about that album, and we said, hey man, these guys are teaching, right? R.I.P. Nip, always. Yeah. R.I.P. Dolph, always. Same thing, same type of time, same content. So I think you know, you heard it here first, folks. Conscious rap is making a different type of return to hip hop.
Big facts, and hopefully with no ceiling, right? I want to see people like Big Crit get even more shine than they get, right? I want to see people who just have that intentionality, right? The music is subjective, so it gets murky when we talk about what's lyrical versus what's giving game versus what's intellectual versus what's artistic. It's so layered. But that's what's beautiful about this album, man, is that it's so layered. You can have an upbeat track like Super, which I really dug, but you can have some chill like C. Carter, Coach Carter, where he just really like hits on. He puts me back in my living room with my little brother, chilling, you know, like really these elements of our childhood. Coach Carter, you know, loving basketball. These old movies, like I just really appreciate his ability to paint pictures with that. But also to stand toe to toe with some big features, man. It's to jump on champagne glasses with Freddie Gibbs and go off and put yourself in that lyrical caliber, right? To be able to do a song with Lil Durk while he's like crooning, doing that Chicago kind of almost R&B that he's doing with her with the vocals. Like he makes a lot of different types of music, which I think is why we can compare him to so many different types of people. He doesn't have a gimmick, which I think I love about him, but I just hope he's able to find some ways to capitalize on the success of really having some good music to offer, right? And I hope he gets all the bags that don't always come with that.
Yeah. But I mean, look, you know, Cordae is entered into a field of some of the fiercest spitters in the game at the moment. The future of hip hop is looking very bright, man. There's a lot of talented people out there making some super fly music. You said Crit's got an album dropping soon. A lot of music is dropping, man. I don't know. We might just have to dedicate one of these episodes soon enough to just all hip hop drops because they coming in quickly. Specifically, we haven't.
Let's do that one conversation about feminism. Doesn't want to talk about anything but hip hop. You said, dude, you know what? Let's just change this to a hip hop podcast from now on, dude. That's all we're going to talk about.
I put my salary out. Where was y'all? I put my salary out. Congratulations. They're coming.
Yeah, nah, for sure. But man, we're gonna keep the show rocking. We got more hip hop for your head top.
Mac Hammy, man. Review. We didn't give this an official review yet.
Yeah. Review. You're right. Yeah, you right with it. 4 out of 5 mics, man, for the Cordae joint. Yeah. Gave him some of the highlights. Forgot to give him the scope, the true scope, for sure.
4 out of 5. 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5. Man, there's so much music that's dropped. Do you want to do my call me now? Or you want to do a different 2-piece?
Yeah, we are running a little long. We could cut it here. Mac Hammy next week. You know what I'm saying? You know, we got y'all.
What you listening to right now, Brother Miles?
Yeah, I've been riding around to that Mac Hammy. Thanks to you, I've been jumping on that Emma Piano wave, getting a little bit vibey. You know what I'm saying? As we
Clean Up the Crib. Cannot get off of that Rich Off Pints 2 by I Swear Bezo. Still listening to that new Ross. Definitely listening to that this Mac Hami. Yeah, man. There's a lot of interesting R&B coming out. I'm waiting on some Tiller and Fayaz that I've got snippets of. Heat. What you listening to, bro?
Hey man, I love your taste in music, man. I love your taste in music. A whole lot of cool stuff just dropped. That Ellie So Straight just dropped. Shout out to you for putting me onto that ESTG. Who hotter than G? G's the hottest thing in the streets right now, bro.
Yes, it's hard to debate that one. It's hard to,
G's
but
the hottest.
42 Doug might be coming right back. I'm waiting for that next 42 Doug project.
Not even not over G. There's no way. I don't think.
Not right. But you go back to those two albums are very comparable. Those two albums go together very well, very well. So 1-2 piece right there.
Staying on that wave, man. Dope Boy dropped an album. Oh really slaps. You got Babyface Ray dropped an album as well. I've been riding around listening to a whole lot of that. And then there's also been some great R&B that's dropped, man. And Mark, LUJ dropped, and also Shakina, Trouble in Paradise. Shout out to my South African sisters. If you're into that good music, check that out.
Man, blessing them. Why? Because we blessed. Why? Because we know.
Yeah, we do.
We know that you could be anywhere in the world, but right now you are tuned into the beautiful tones of Chestnut and Hazelnut. We try to bring you some carefully curated content. We try to bring you some stuff that helps you figure out how you feel about the world and helps you feel good about whatever you got going on, man. This is a space of love. This is a space of celebrating. This is a space of celebrating how good it feels to be Black. Don't it feel good, Sway?
I love my ladies.
Even when it's hard. Listen, eat something delicious. Hug somebody you love like that. Peace, water, we gone.
Yeah, I get that. But is we live though? Is we like all the way live?